Hey everybody, welcome back. As we discuss what it is, these best practices for establishing your brand on social media. So in section one, we talked about the common myths about social media. Do you need to be on every platform? Yes, but you're definitely going to have some dominant platforms. For Airbnb, we kind of, Instagram is really their dominant platform, and you'll see why when we get into posting schedules. The second thing is we talked about, can you publish the same thing on every platform? Oftentimes, and I'm just going to reiterate here, oftentimes individuals are they create something for Facebook because for most people they feel like that's their dominant platform. For most nonprofits, that's actually true. And they create a Facebook post and then they post it on everything. And the reality is that or they resize it, but different audiences engage on different things. For instance, I have one client who their audience on Facebook is about 55 plus women. Their audience on Instagram is 18 to 25 women. Okay. So the thing is like those two different individual groups of women, those two different demographics, are interested in wildly different things. And that tends to be true that your Facebook audience is probably going to be about 40 plus, and your Instagram audience is going to be maybe 18 to 35. Twitter can range all over the place, as can YouTube. So it's a little bit yet less selective on age. Although I tend to see for nonprofits that the actual YouTube audiences scale pretty similarly to Facebook. So they're older audiences. Um, and then we talked about how vanity metrics are they're important, but they need to be strategic, and you need to have real reasons why you have a benchmark. If you want 1 million followers, then you have to understand why you want 1 million followers, and you have to have a plan and a strategy as to what you're going to do with those individuals. And then finally, that social media delivers fast results. Social media is a grind. I think in one of the other modules, I mentioned the fact that when I launched my nonprofit quite some time ago, you launch your Facebook page. And for anybody that is a founder that's watching this, you launch that Facebook page and it's like you following your own page, and you're like, okay, this is kind of lame. And then maybe in a couple of days you get a couple followers and you're thinking, I really expected this to move a lot faster because everyone's online. Well, the reality is it doesn't move fast. You're able to reach people quickly. You're able to reach millions of people. But again, we really focused on in the last section the common myths about social media, about building relationships with your users and understanding what it is that they want, giving them that over time, and building the relationship, understanding that relationship is a spectrum. So you may have individuals that react and love you right away. You'll have individuals that really research you but don't really buy in, and then you're going to have people that don't give you the time of day, and you need to sort of have a plan on how you engage all of those individuals. So today we're going to talk about the best practices for establishing your brand on social media. So we're going to take some of those things that we talked about, those common myths, we debunked those, and now we're going to kind of talk about the right way to do things. And we're going to cover 3 different elements here in establishing your brand. The first one is that you're supposed to share often. And the reality is that often is a subjective term, right? So what might be often for you and often for somebody else or wildly different things. If you're a news agency or you're a nonprofit that you pride yourself on being up to date on the news, often might mean every few hours. If you are a nonprofit that, for instance, looks at, let's say, childhood blindness, often might be once a day. And so those things are can be wildly different. So share often is subjective. You hear that a lot. I mean, you have very popular social media sort of gurus like Gary Vaynerchuk, who says, look, you got to be posting constantly. You got to put out all this content, and we put out 80 forms of content a day. Well, that really works for him. The reality is that in that strategy, I mean, it genuinely works for him. It's probably not going to work for you. And there's a couple of variables there, right? How often does your audience want to be engaged? I bet if for some nonprofits, if they posted 23 times a day, they would actually lose audience and not gain. For other, so what does your audience really want from you? When do they want to hear from you, and how often? Another thing to look at is how big is your team? For some nonprofits, the communication team is one or three, 25, 50, but all those people are doing different things. Some people are focused on media, some on graphic design, some on web development, some on copy, and getting all those people to work together in a streamlined system that's able to deliver content on a regular basis is hard enough, much less setting yourself to a standard that honestly you can't reach. And so if you can't reach that, that's okay. Unless you, like I said, you're a news agency and you need to reach individuals every couple of hours. If you're not a news agency, well, then maybe once a day is okay for you. And you start to set some goals to actually engage with people more often. But test those goals. And that really is the foundation and the crux of everything that we're going to talk about is that, like, if you want to post more because you want to grow your audience and you want them to be more engaged, try posting 6 times a day over a week and see what happens. Does your audience grow? Do they share more? Does your engagement rate increase? And ultimately, does your or does your audience go against what you're doing and say, I don't actually want to hear from you 6 times a day, which is totally fine. That's just what your audience is and the audience that you built. And so you might lose people and say, oh, let's go back to actually posting just once or twice a day. And so the idea here is to understand your audience and have a strategy. Again, I think Airbnb is a great example of this because they're not going to be, when I hear share often, you would think I would throw somebody up here that is going to be posting like several times a day. Airbnb, as an example, does not post several times a day on their platforms. And so it's understanding how to strategically engage your audiences that's more important. And that's what I want you to focus on. So if you hear share often, subjective, really find out what works for you and your organization. So let's go here and let's look at some dates. As I'm looking through, we have this, June 22nd. Today, the date is August 15th. June 1st. We have the World Book Day, April 23rd. So these are things where we have in their timeline, we have a substantial shift in posting. That is certainly not every single day. And so my guess is that, and I kind of prove this hypothesis here, that this isn't their main platform, right? They don't view this. Remember when I said you need to be on every platform? That's true, but you really need that sort of focused platform. For Airbnb, their focus platform is not Facebook. I think their focus platform is Instagram. And so here we have 1 day ago, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. You can see it here. 4 days ago, 6 days ago. Okay. So we have an almost posting every single day on Instagram. And so this to me seems like their strategy is much more engaging on a daily basis for what they're doing than obviously here where we're, a month behind, 2 months behind almost of what they're doing on Facebook. If you go to their Twitter account, we have 6 hours ago, and then we have August 13th. So today, for the purpose of this video, in order to compare the ratio of posting, today is August 15th for me as I'm recording. August 13th is actually the date that they posted other than today. So it is every couple of days that they are posting on. Now, they may do a couple of times because they're doing some responses here, but fundamentally they're looking at every couple of days on Twitter. So it seems like about a few times a month on Facebook, every single day on Instagram, every other day on Twitter, and then on YouTube, you have a massive span. They posted a bunch of stuff 2 weeks ago, and then before that, you're looking at 3 months ago, and then I think it gets into 5 and then 7 months. So the thing is here is that they're uploading a ton of content, it seems like, at one time. So it's probably more campaign-based. Also, video takes a lot longer to get out there. And so they're using, you can see here, this is not a polished sort of video. These are not necessarily like, probably recorded on an iPhone because they want to use that content there to engage right away. Now, if I go over to, I mean, these are professional videos, right? So, in this sense, they have these thumbnails that are specifically designed in a way that look at their campaign colors, right? So we see their colors here. This blue, and this yellow, and this orangey red are sort of echoed in every single element. The font is exactly the same, and they are obviously launching a campaign. This obviously the Country Pub Project. I mean, these are campaign-oriented elements that are professionally done. Here it looks like we have an animated video. It takes a lot of time to turn that around. So I think that they probably strategically sit down and say, these are the campaigns we want to complete for video. The proper place to really put that is YouTube, and we're going to spend a great deal of time and probably effort and money in order to make those look very professional. You want to grab your iPhone? We're going to throw that up on Facebook or on Instagram. And then here we're going to have very specific calls to action, campaign announcements, really kind of explaining very big brand elements that Airbnb is trying to construct here. They're talking about a partnership. They have a video here, which again is something very Zoom-like in the sense that probably connects really closely to the pandemic. And then again, their branded elements here are really strong. So that's what they're doing on Facebook here. Brand elements are strong. And by the way, like let's look at we kind of looked at the color here and the cohesive brand. We're going to get into this in a second, but I'm just going to give you a preview of that a little bit as we look through their feed. I mean, it's beautiful. They really have a standard for images that they want there that represent their brand. And yes, it's very colorful, but they're using specific filters that really bring those colors into not a contrast, but a uniformity. And that is really important where they can have things. And as I scroll down, my eyes aren't stressed or brought into one specific thing that is dramatically popping out to me because it all feels very uniform. They understand their brand. They understand how to greet that here. This campaign is obviously a standout for them. And they're using these very bright colors. But other than that, which is cool because they're risking that, I think, a little bit in the sense of saying we want to do something different with this campaign that is, of course, visible on most of the platforms here, all of them but Twitter. And so they think that that's important, and they want to really communicate that. That's fine. Take those risks. Let your brand should have some level of elasticity, meaning that like these hard and fast rules are not going to work in, again, building the relationship. You have to understand people are complex. People have elasticity or a spectrum of their personality. Your brand can as well. So again, share often is subjective, so you want to construct a good strategy. The second thing is that you want to use the data to understand what your audience engages with. So we have a couple of things here, and I do not have access, of course, to Airbnb's data, right? Like for most of you, if you have a Facebook page, you can go here, you can click more, and you'll be able to click a thing called Insights, and it's going to tell you exactly some engaging things about your audience. But we can tell a few things. So for instance, here we have 67 shares, 1.4 thousand comments, 204 reactions. As we go here, Black Lives Matter, obviously a big cultural movement, and so the substantial uptick in engagement. And then 760 for the book thing, 4.2 thousand comments. Now, here's something really important is that if you go up here to their first post and you look at the comments, you have 1.4 thousand comments. Their comments get a lot more than their reactions. That's fantastic. They are getting their audience to actually engage. And so I think that's a really important component of what their social strategy is. If their metrics were reactions, which for a lot of people there, how many likes did I get on that post? Well, they would look at this and they'd say, we kind of failed. But they actually got 1.4 thousand comments. Go here. Lots of reactions. Again, the comments outpace the reactions, even for this big one. 760 reactions, 4.2 thousand comments. Now, I think if you recall here, check out the comments below, right? So they pushed people into the comments. They understand that this isn't their benchmark. This isn't their metric that they're looking for. It's comments. 934 reactions, 2.3 thousand comments. 934 reactions on somebody that has, 16 million people I mean, that's not huge metrics, but we understand that comments are their metrics, not reactions. for your organization, because someone says how many likes, that does not mean that is your metric, right? That is so common, that doesn't mean it's your metric. Your metric might be comments. Your metric might be shares, right? And it also might be reactions. It's dependent upon what your audience wants to do. So you need to understand that if Airbnb sat here and said at the very beginning on Facebook, our data, the data that we want, the benchmarks we want to set are based on reactions, they are looking at this and they're thinking they failed. Airbnb understands reactions are our best thing. Comments is where it's at. That's where we want to engage, and that's what they're doing. And in that sense, they're growing. That's a success. Going over to their Instagram page here, we have the hearts way down on comments, right? Again, way down on comments. We have 29. So this is similar to the Facebook like versus the Facebook comment. And as you go through here, you're seeing that the actual likes substantially outweigh the comments. So if they took their Facebook strategy, where comments was the dominant way of engagement for their audience, and they said, well, comments is what Airbnb does on social media, and you go over to Instagram and you're like, well, we actually failed. But here you have 29.5 thousand likes, right? 797 comments. Here, if I were assessing the social media platform, I would say Instagram is different than Facebook. Again, remember, I need to be on every platform. I'm going to have dominant platforms. The key to that is building a strategy about how you're going to engage on each platform. That strategy includes difference in metrics. Comments is not their thing on Instagram. It is their thing on Facebook. Here, they're getting engagements, and they're obviously getting a ton of views, 88, 83,000, 61,000. So they're getting a ton of views, and they probably highly value this video, that, again, 145,000 views. They highly probably value this video, and they highly value these likes because they're getting these 18, 19,000. They're leaning into what their audience does with them on that specific platform. Okay. Here on Twitter, they are not getting a huge amount of engagement for as big as Airbnb is. 21,000 followers. I'm sorry, 727,000 followers. Nowhere near the 16 million people that they have here on Facebook. And if we scroll up here, we have 4.6 million followers on Instagram. Airbnb, Twitter is not their strongest thing. Now, one thing that you need to know about Airbnb on Twitter is that they actually have Airbnb Design, Airbnb in India, Airbnb UK, Airbnb Public Policy, Airbnb, their actual account that we're looking at now, and Airbnb Help. Okay, Philippines, data. So they are not necessarily as invested in this. But they, in fact, here you can see that they're pushing you to help for COVID-19 or for assistance. So they use this as a way to engage people, right? This is how they help people. And so this is how they connect with their audience, where they start to have conversations on Twitter. For your audience, it may not work to sort of separate each and every element of what you're trying to do into these different channels. For Airbnb, that absolutely works. And so they understand that, like, if I'm going here, what I'm going to talk about I'm going to show the beauty. Remember, let's go back down. We covered this. Which tub do you want to relax in this weekend? And this sort of engagement content. This is where they put it on this Airbnb profile. Help is where they have these conversations where you can please check our help center for the latest information from Airbnb on COVID-19. It's where they address those types of concerns and engage with their customers. So they understand that these two things are different. They don't want to do them on the same profile. So they're going to create separate profiles in order to do that. Perfectly fine. May not work for you, but it's part of a strategy that you need to construct. And again, the key element and where you start with this strategy is what is working. What do you want to do? What are your objectives? What are your goals? And not the goals that you think of beforehand, the goals that your audience wants to engage with you on. Okay. Here, as far as data, some of this stuff gets, we have clients, for instance, that get millions of views on videos. We have clients that get hundreds of views on videos. It really is a subjective thing. You would think somebody that had 220,000 subscribers would definitely get a lot more views than what they're getting here. But the reality is that this is kind of the standard of what they're doing. Now they have a few, looks like 157,000 views, 307,000 views. So these Airbnb experiences obviously did, a few of those did really well. But the thing is that like their YouTube page, while it is beautiful, while they obviously have put a lot of money into it, the value that they're seeing in engagement here is not based on views. And so you have to look at that and you have to say, well, this is probably not your main platform. For them, again, it's Instagram. But nevertheless, they put a lot of value and a lot of money and effort into developing their YouTube page. So for them internally, whatever that value is, maybe they use it for embeds, and that's so their expectations are a little bit less. But whatever their value is, I mean, they have a very good YouTube game. It's just they do not post often. Remember, we go to videos, and it's like every few weeks, every few months, they post a ton of videos. And when they do, they usually throw up kind of like the whole campaign. So here we have, looking at this 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, this is all the Olympic stuff 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, all of it was posted at probably right around the same time within the same, at least few days. So that is important to think about in the sense of they're not trying to create, engaging content every single day. They are actually creating campaigns, throwing these campaigns up, and what they're doing with them, I'm not sure, but they obviously see value in it. So using that data to understand what your audience engages with is super important. Comments, Facebook. Likes, Instagram. Airbnb, communicating with your audience. And because it's not a hugely engaged audience, they are only posting here every couple of days. For Twitter, most people are posting 6 times a day. For Airbnb YouTube, it is branded campaign content that goes up at one time, and they utilize that in whichever way Airbnb is utilizing that. So, which is a perfect segue into developing good brand practices, because we just gave you a few. Engage the way that your audience wants to engage. The other brand practices here, as well as understanding that each of these platforms are different. So how you engage there is going to be different. But let's go through some brand practices. Airbnb, obviously a strong brand. Their logo, their design, everything really pops. It's got a cohesive look and feel. It's sort of all of the quintessential brand things that you want. But let's go through and see how their brand is represented on each platform. Again, some of this might be some redo, but this is really setting up some best practices. One, they understand how to engage on each platform and how to comment and how to write their copy and write their and post their images. So here in Facebook, you see things to be a little bit less filtered and a little bit less of a care on what it is that they're posting in the sense of graphic. But nevertheless, like everything here is very Airbnb. They have a lot of these see mores, which means that they understand that they can put this longer content here on Facebook in order to engage people. And so the good brand practice is that like use Facebook in order to tell stories, in order to deliver calls to action, and in order to drive traffic. So Facebook is going to do a fantastic job at every one of those things. The best practices here on Instagram, let's again look at what they're doing. The beauty of the images, we talked about that already. They definitely understand, as you look at their grid, how important that is. They are trying to get likes. And here, one of the things is that they definitely have it's funny, they still have the link in bio. Once you have over 10,000 followers, you're able to actually engage in linking out of Airbnb. And so that's an important goal. I know we talked about vanity metrics and we said, kind of don't worry about that number. But the thing is that hitting 10,000 on Instagram is incredibly important because you're able to link out of it and start to use it as a place to drive traffic, as opposed to a place where you just show someone a really beautiful photo and that's all that you can do as a small nonprofit. You really want to get into the point where you're driving traffic out of Instagram. So the most important thing here, Instagram was created to deliver beautiful images. Your imagery on Instagram is absolutely key. how you choose to deliver that. This is becoming a lot more common. This authenticity in video shot from an iPhone. That's okay. That's fine. You can see their stuff still fits in. If I look at their videos, this is a little wobbly, but nevertheless, this one here definitely fits in to the Airbnb brand. Their consistent use of filtering. Now, Airbnb. Let's look at a couple of different things here. The places, whether it's a cityscape, whether it's sort of like this ancient city look, somebody in an office, this patio look. I mean, they have to deal with a ton of different locales, jungle, a beach, this mountainside lake look, a ton of different looks and feels and then here we have the snow. That's kind of what I was driving towards in the mountains here. So they have to deal with all these different look and feels, all these different color palettes. Not any one of these houses is the same. And so how do they do that? They use filtering, and they accept the fact that and touching up these photos, and accept the fact that we're going to have to engage in a lot of different colors. The color palettes for each one of these is fairly wildly different, right? For each of these six, I mean, we have maybe the lighter colors here, but this is definitely white. This is a natural. We have some darks here. We have some. They incorporate this dark here in the thing, but we have some muted colors. These sort of robust oranges in here with the muted colors, and then the really robust dark orange here with this sort of green landscape. How do they bring all those together? They bring it together through their filtering process and how they touch it out in Photoshop, because they know exactly how they want to look on Instagram. All of that to say, know how you want to look on Instagram. And so when you're looking at it, only accept beautiful photos, decide how you want to engage your audience, and know how you want to look. That is the substantial, so for Facebook, and I'm going to kind of recap these: engaging your audience, getting your audience, delivering them information, getting them a call to action, driving traffic. Instagram, deciding how your brand, the look and feel of your brand, and executing that visually is going to be really key. Once you hit 10,000 followers, you're able to now drive traffic out of here. Not nearly as much as you will Facebook, but you can do it out of here. Being able to engage, obviously, with stories, and now Reels has come out. For Twitter, not so much important here. They like to do this comparison element. They do it a few times here where they're throwing up several different photos. They're linking out to Airbnb.com often. But again, here, really, there's no look and feel because it fits. Like any of this could have gone on Instagram, could have gone on Facebook, but the really important thing here is that they're engaging with their audience. So here they're retweeting, so they don't have any control over some of this stuff. And so I think for them here, what they want to do is really look at this as a platform about how they have a conversation. Facebook, driving traffic, engaging your audience, call to action. Instagram, the beauty of your organization and the look and feel of your organization. Twitter, having conversations with your audience. And then finally, Facebook here, they really deliver on professionalism. I think that's super important on YouTube. And so when you're here on YouTube, you want to make sure that you're delivering your best video content, professionalism, campaign-oriented materials. So when you're developing your brand practices, you know how to deliver the brands, your look and feel. It's what people think of you, but understanding how to execute on those. So I'm going to go all of those really quick just to finish up. Section 2, best practices for establishing your brand on social media, of the first session of the growth module. Going through here, Facebook, you are going to drive traffic. You are going to engage your audience and do storytelling. And you are going to make sure that this is sort of where your long form content is, and the place where you really start to connect with your audience in a myriad of ways, right? So it's a lot more flexible, the things that you can post on Facebook. Instagram, this is the quintessential look and feel of your organization, defined visually and through short clip video. And so that is fundamentally it. If you feel like I have a look and feel, it needs to be captured here. You need to be able to open up this grid, and I can tell you exactly what Airbnb is all about, right? I can connect with them in a really big way visually. I know that I want to be at some of these places. They want me to be there. They want me to pay the money. They want me to rent from Airbnb. It is all here visually on their Instagram page. Their Instagram page is by far their best content, right? It's beautiful. Why is it their best content? Well, because that's actually their top platform, right? So for Twitter, this is where you have a conversation with your audience. Don't focus so much on your Twitter images or whatever. That's not going to be the most important thing here. It's going to be having your conversations. YouTube, utilizing campaigns and branded content that is really beautiful done. This is where your best video goes. This is where you launch your campaigns that are done in video. That's for YouTube. So hopefully, in using Airbnb as an example, you can start to see the best way to communicate your brand, the best way to connect with people here. Written word, visually, conversation, video, right? So you understand that each platform has this different thing, has this different element of connection. And the question is, how does your brand, how does your organization connect with your audience on these platforms separately? And that, again, is the biggest takeaway from session one. Each of these platforms does a different thing. You have one singular brand. You need to give your brand the flexibility to engage with your audiences, which are probably separate audiences on each of these platforms, in a way that connects with them. And then build your benchmarks and your metrics off of what your audience wants, not what you want to see. Thanks.